Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We are continuing the War Magic series today. In this video, we are in the Mythic Adventures book. We are looking at first level arcane spells today. The first video was on the divine spells, so if you missed it, go check that one out. But we're going to take a look at the wizard, sorcerer, arcane spells, their list, and look at what spells could be used in creative ways to give you a big advantage in a medieval conflict, whether it be open field battle or ship-to-ship combat or sieging an area. So once I find the spells, we will dive in. There they are. And being the Mythic Adventure book, I expect this to have a lot of spells that are very useful. Anticipate Peril, that one's not going to be helpful unless you're trying to avoid a decision down a fork with an ambush. That might help you then. Break. Let's see what break does. Because break, I can see that working against a boat or a door. You can target up to one medium or smaller object per caster level. Augmented Third. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the target object given the broken condition on a successful save and are destroyed on a failed save. So the size of the object would mean that it wouldn't fit my qualifications for being useful in a siege or against another boat. Burning Hands. That one's useful. Taking the non-mythic version of the spell, put that in one-use items that your front row could activate, and all of a sudden you've now dealt a little bit of fire damage to everybody that's in the front. The range increases to 20 feet and the damage dealt increases to 1d6 points of fire damage per caster level, maximum 5d6. So if you were 5th level making this, you got 20 foot, so now you're covering, assuming they're not packed as steeply as they would normally be, you have 1 row per 5 feet, so you can hit 4 rows of soldiers in the melee combat where they're shield fighting. That would do a lot of damage, and they would have about, if they were very experienced, they'd have about 5 hit dice. They'd be about 5th level. So if they're not, then you probably are going to take them out pretty quickly. Collar Spray, that one's very useful. Range increases to 30 feet. Add half your tier to the spell's hit dice categories to determine its effects on creatures. At 3rd tier, a creature with 3 or fewer hit dice is unconscious, blinded, and stunned. 1 with 4 or 5 hit dice is blinded and stunned, and 1 with 6 or more hit dice is stunned. Creatures that succeed at their saves are dazzled for 1 minute. So that's going to be useful. Same thing, put it in one-use items that they could spray that at the enemy. Ear-piercing Scream. I don't see why that would not be useful. Indoor Elements isn't going to be that great. Enlarged Person is going to be great. So let's start with Ear-piercing Scream and Enlarged Person. The damage dealt increases to 1d8 points of sonic damage per 2 caster levels, maximum 5d8. The duration that the creature in the area are dazed is a number of rounds equal to your tier. Augmented third, if you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the spell affects a 30-foot cone rather than a single target. So right now it's a single target. Put that on some ammunition, and as it hits the target, they're rattled with this screaming noise that would do a d8 points of damage per 2 caster levels. So assuming they were 3rd level, that would be 2d8 damage, which could really weaken whoever got hit with that ammunition. And then you just give it to your 3rd or 4th row back in the shield wall, and with some slings, and they can launch a few of them into the enemy and really weaken an area. Next was enlarge person. You can increase the target size by up to 2 size categories to a maximum of huge. If the target grows 2 sizes, its weight increases by a factor of 25. It gains +4 size bonus to strength and -4 to penalty to dex. -2 penalty on attack rolls and AC because of its increased size. A medium humanoid creature whose size increases to huge has a space of 15 feet and a natural reach of 10 feet. Mythic enlarge person counters dispels mythic reduce person. And that'd be really good to put it on some of your heavy hitters and having them go in, or some beasts that you want to release into the enemy. The problem is enlarged person specifies humanoid. Expeditious retreat, which expeditious retreat was good on movement, but it's not great on making a big difference for a military. The speed bonus from the spell increases to 40 feet. Add your tier to acrobatics checks to avoid attacks of opportunity from your movement. And when your movement provokes an attack of opportunity, add your tier to your AC against the attack. So it's not great, but it's still pretty good. Featherfall. Featherfall is good for your skirmishers, your regular PCs doing the regular D&D thing. Regular exploring and fighting. Floating disc is the same. Grease. Let's see if they changed grease any. If you cast Mythic Grease on an area, add your tier to the acrobatics DC to move within or through the area. If you cast it on a creature's armor or clothing, add your tier to its escape arts check and combat maneuver checks attempted to escape a grapple. Augmented, you can expend 2 uses of mythic power to make a grease flammable. It ignites from any fire at least the size of a candle flame. If a greased area is ignited, any creature in the area on your turn takes 1d3 points of fire damage and might catch on fire. If a greased creature is ignited, it takes 2d6 points of fire damage and might catch on fire. Add your tier to the save DC. So grease is made a little bit better, but I've always house ruled that the grease can be set on fire, so take that as you will. Hold portal, that holds a door shut. That can be very useful to controlling where your enemy is moving, especially if they're coming in to a fortification area. Hydraulic push was useful last time I remember reading it. Let's look at it again. The water is boiling hot or freezing cold, dealing 1d6 points of fire or cold damage per 2 caster levels. Add your tier to your combat maneuver bonus for the spell. So that pushing people out of the way would always be useful because now you're making a hole in their formation. Mage armor isn't going to be useful unless you can spread that amongst them with one-use items. So there you go. but it doesn't stack with regular armor, so remember that. So it's better to give that to your archers and spellcasters than it is to give it to your armored soldiers fighting. Magic missile, always useful. Problem is there's no way to put that on an item that I'm aware of, but if you could give them a one-use item with magic missile, they activate it, they launch a missile that does a d4 plus 1 damage. The mythic version of magic missile the damage dealt by each missile increases to 2d4 plus 1. The missile bypasses the shield spell and similar effects that block non-mythic versions of the spell. Augmented Force. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the spell creates double the normal number of missiles, affecting up to 10 creatures. Its range increases to line of sight, and it bypasses the target's spell resistance and spell immunity. So that one can be very useful. Downside is it's usually 1 target per missile, which could be useful more in a smaller fight than in a bigger fight. Or if you needed to take out like an ogre that's part of the army that you're fighting. Memory lapse. That one's not going to be great. Obscuring mist. That one, I believe, as a mythic spell, that one's going to be awesome. The range increases to 50 feet, and the cloud's radius and height both increase to 50 feet. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the range increases to 500 feet, and the cloud's radius increases to 500 feet, and its height increases to 100 feet. Winds can't dissipate the mist unless the area of the wind affects the entire area of this spell. Areas of mist burned away by fire spells become obscured again in 1d4 rounds after the fire effect ends. If you're at least 6th tier and expend 3 uses of mythic power, the range increases to 1 mile. The cloud radius increases to 1 mile, and its height increases to 500 feet. The cloud is as resistant to wind and fire effects as the 3rd tier version. So that you have just one of those with your traveling with your military. Even the 500-foot radius one would be very good to obscure what's going on in the battle, so that way other spellcasters have a harder time acting. The general would have a harder time knowing what's going on to issue commands and have the commands heard. Well, not necessarily heard, seen if they're using the flags and stuff. So that can give you a big advantage. So just carry out this like single orb that when you smash it, this mist cloud occupies the 500 miles or whatever. Not miles, 500 feet or whatever. Protection from chaos, evil, good, law. That's not going to be useful unless you know you're fighting, say, demons, devils, and whatnot. Then you could put them on one-use amulets, and when the battle begins, they say the blessing or whatever that activates the amulet and gives them that for the duration of, say, one battle. Ray of Enfeeblement. Put that on a bunch of one-use items or a bunch of ammo for like slings or regular arrows or whatnot. Hit a bunch of the enemy with that and drop their strength really low. Now they're going to have a hard time moving. They're going to have a hard time swinging their weapons. They're going to have a hard time using their shields. Reduce person. You could put that on ammunition as well and hit a bunch of people with that. All of a sudden, their really strong side now gets reduced to about half its size and probably effectiveness as far as keeping you from pushing them back and everything. Shadow Weapon, Shocking Grasp. Shocking Grasp, you could put that on a bunch of one-use ammunitions and drop that on the enemy, and then they take 2d4 electrical damage in addition to getting hit with a sling stone or an arrowhead. Sleep. The spell affects up to 8 hit dice of creatures, and you can choose the order in which the creatures are affected by the spell. Any effect that would automatically awaken a sleeping creature instead allows it to attempt a new will saving throw to awaken. Augmented 8. If you expend 3 uses of mythic power, you can target all living creatures other than you that have 8 hit dice or fewer in a 1-mile radius centered on you. Creatures that fail their saving throw fall asleep for a number of days equal to your tier. You can select a number of creatures up to your tier to not be affected by the spell. If you can get the 8th version of that, you could drop that on an enemy's battle lines, and all of a sudden you now have complete control over the area. Most medieval battles, once the battle begins, are usually limited to about a 1-mile area. If you're sieging a place, you could cast that at the gates of the siege, and a 1-mile area of the siege area is now asleep. Theft Ward and True Strike. Okay, Theft Ward isn't going to be useful. It's advantageous if you're trying to steal stuff, but as far as a big battle making a difference on what's going on, it's not going to do anything. True Strike. The affected attack bypasses all damage reduction. So the Mythic True Strike bypasses damage reduction in addition to giving you the bonus to your attack roll. If you expend 2 uses of Mythic Power, you gain a +10 insight bonus on your second attack that round and a +5 insight bonus on your third attack that round. The second and third attacks can be on your turn or another creature's turn before your next turn, such as when you attempt an attack of opportunity. That's cool. Also, what's cool is that since it bypasses damage reduction, even the lower one, if you just give that as 1-use items to even just your archers, all of a sudden they got a +20 to their first attack. Give them one of the arrows like Shocking Grasp Arrow. Now they can really decimate the enemy forces pretty quickly. That's all the first level arcane spells out of the Mythic Adventures. So with that, this video is over, and it's a shorter video than the Divine version, so that I'm thankful for. Until we all game again, guys.